You're watching Wisconsin Eye, an independent, nonprofit public affairs network, engaging the citizens of Wisconsin since 2007 through access to government proceedings and public policy events.
Tom Still is the president of the Wisconsin Technology Council. It's a nonpartisan group that caters to tech issues in the legislature and the governor's office, and he has a high-powered board, is in touch with a lot of big employers in the state. So, Tom, you've been listening in. What's your takeaway?
Hi. Well, thanks, Jeff, and thanks to the organizers of this, because it's a really important platform, and I congratulate everybody for being a part of this. Well, the numbers are really hard to dispute. Kids who attend organized but relatively inexpensive preschool programs are more likely to graduate from high school, to earn more as adults, to stay off welfare, avoid spending time in jail. Those are things that are all touched on today. And all of that accrues dividends for society over time, especially long-term economic paybacks. In fact, you look at some of the national literature, it's a payback of somewhere between $4 and $9 for every dollar spent. So that's, study after study has looked at that. And those are tangible down the road benefits. Today, improving the state of early childhood education in Wisconsin appears to have taken on an urgency for workers and employers alike. And so that was an emerging theme that I heard today, or a recurring theme, I should say. Whether it was people who run the child care centers, to economists, to healthcare executives, basically the message was good luck addressing today's worker shortages without dealing with an emerging crisis that's going on within early childhood education. That was a big part of what I was hearing. Some people already living in Wisconsin feel they can't re-enter the workforce unless high-quality child care is available for their kids. That's mostly parents, but some grandparents may be retiring early to help their extended families with child care. That also touches the workforce. At a time when interstate migration is surging across the United States, people looking for great places to live may take Wisconsin off their moving list if they have doubts about child care and education. In fact, I think there was a bit of that in a recent economic development piece in Racine County that did not happen. Employers who were traditionally hands-off, very independent about workforce child care, thinking, this is for the employee to work out, are now rethinking how this affects recruitment, retention, and productivity. I heard that for some child care centers, it's become a matter of survival. Finding qualified staff workers to care for young children is hampered by wage and benefit pressures within the larger market. Even for those child care professionals who are dedicated to kids, and what I'm hearing is those who are in the profession right now are definitely dedicated. The Crosse survey that was referenced, about nearly 20% of existing centers may be nearing closure. And one big reason is the large number of open jobs. Well, that's a problem. And you really can't, unless you fill those jobs, because of the ratios of caregivers to children, you can't really move on. I was really struck by Jody Wydick's comment, linking this all together, that children thrive, and when children thrive, parents do, and when parents do, businesses thrive, and communities thrive. But it all comes back to having these healthy kinds of programs. So there are models emerging about how to do this. Some are tied into what businesses themselves are doing. Gunderson Clinic is a good example. There are some discussions well underway about how to use ARPA dollars in this respect. And I think it was said many times that a 3 to 5 year horizon on trying to get people's hands around this is really important. I would say there's some more urgent needs as well. There's a long-term side to that. We could be looking 20 years down the road in terms of what early childhood education means to this state and this society. Closer at hand, there will be an election coming up. I think part of that election debate will be whether there's already too much money out there from the federal government floating around and not yet really sticking where it needs to stick. Will there be rescission resolutions that come up in the next round of Congress? I don't know, but it's certainly being talked about. So those are some of the things. I mean, I would say that as a former journalist, I'm all for storytelling. That's a big part of what we try to do at the Tech Council with our members and others. But at the same time, I think there is some urgency around a set of deliverables. What comes out of this, other than storytelling and continued storytelling, what comes out of this? Who's going to be taking charge of what happens next? What are the proposals? What are the best practices? And so those are all things we need to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. All right, so I'm in the audience now, and I think we would need to hear from you, and we'll have the panel react to some of the takeaways. Yeah. But I saw Ruth in the hall, and she said she wanted to jump up and say something a few times during the morning session. So, Ruth, here's your chance. I'll just hold this.
Okay, thanks. So, anybody who knows me knows that I am quite often wanting to jump up and say things, and not always appropriately. But anyway, I do want to. There was such a richness of issues discussed today, but to me, I feel like there's a couple sort of hot ticket items that I feel like we need to be paying super close attention to. The fact that there was the article that came out in the New York Times that presents this Republican bill that's being presented in the U.S. Senate, and the Democratic bill, which has already been presented in the Senate, to me speaks to the fact that we're very close to options for some sort of bipartisanship on this, and some aspects of what they're proposing are not that far apart, right? Capping household income, no more than 7% spent on child care. Ensuring that states set child care rates that reflect the true cost of care, and that is what will be covered in subsidy dollars. The mechanisms on how they do it differ, but the bottom line is we've not had an opportunity, probably since we kind of blew things up when Nixon was president and lost a huge opportunity to publicly fund child care. And so this feels to me like an opportunity for all of us to get behind in whatever way we can. And then I think the other thing I want to say, and Chris, thank you for bringing it up, Raising Wisconsin, I just want to point out, this is an initiative that is built off of a coalition of probably 50 organizations across the state of Wisconsin. Mark O'Connell's group is part of it. Chris is part of it. The CCR&Rs and SFTA are part of it. The Towns Association, the League of Municipalities, the Council of Churches, United Ways across the state. This is a coalition that are saying we need to be able to move politically on these issues in our state. We've got a policy agenda framed out there that's pretty robust in terms of what we think is needed to really stand up this industry from both a parent perspective, child care provider perspective, opportunities for parent engagement, opportunities for business engagement. So I just want to, I think, draw people's attention to that. I think if we wait another 3 to 5 years, we're going to be in much worse shape than we're already in. And I think we really need to be as nimble as possible and take action now on the things that are low-hanging fruit out there.
So you sound optimistic.
When you see that Senator Tim Scott introduces a bill with a significant support for child care, yes, to me that's worthy of optimism.
Okay. Is this audience optimistic? Let's hear some optimism. Yes? Anybody else want to have some comments out here? You? Okay. State your name and who you're with.
So Kimber Lytle, and I'm with WICA. I work with Ruth and Chris. Thanks again for the shout out for Raising Wisconsin. Just wanted to comment that website does offer an opportunity for people to record, write down their thoughts, stories, etc. And so the website officially just launched a week or two ago, but go check it out. There is a platform there. If someone wanted to submit their story, we're collecting it. Also, I wanted to provide a kind of a state legislative perspective. I do business engagement now at WICA, but I've been in Wisconsin state government for 20 years, working with a wide variety of legislators in the executive branch, et cetera. I just wanted to comment about the advocacy piece. While there are some legislators that are very well aware of childcare and the role that it plays in our infrastructure and employers, et cetera, there are many that still do not. And some of it's philosophical. It's a difference of what is the role of government and should government fund that sort of thing or not. And at least prior to COVID, the only organizations that would lobby on childcare were organizations that represented childcare providers, organizations, et cetera. And as you know, Mark, you have to go there a lot to talk about these issues. You need to be that squeaky wheel. You can't stop by once a year and expect a huge investment. You need to be there all the time, just like you and your team have always done. And so that's where childcare needs to be.
So what's that website again?
RaisingWisconsin.org.
Okay.
But I just wanted to mention, again, this coalition, whether it's the counties or Rural Wisconsin Health Co-op, et cetera, having all these different organizations, having these employers, parents, childcare providers, all contributing their voice and their stories is what brings that power to this issue and raises it. It's kind of like you guys were mentioning broadband. In the legislature, we would hear from 30 or 40 organizations about how they need broadband. So legislators are like, wow, we should actually do something about broadband. You need that same sort of thing for childcare, where you're hearing from employers, parents, the whole breadth, not just the providers. And so I just wanted to mention that because that is what is effective legislatively in getting attention to it, pushing some of our elected officials that this may not jive with their philosophical view of government to feel that they need to actually do something about it.
Let me piggyback on that if I can. So I find it ironic, a year ago, broadband was starting to come into a year and a half ago, starting to come into its own. And if you'd sent the word mapping to anybody, they would have had no idea what the hell you were talking about, okay? Now, everybody and his brother and sister knows what broadband mapping's about. We know more right now about where fiber optics are in this state than we know about where we are on early care and education, okay? And I think the messaging there is absolutely correct. Just a point vis-a-vis Ruth's thing, to clarify. Nobody's talking about waiting 5 years, okay? But the world doesn't operate in a static environment, okay? What you've done is create a massive and wonderful opportunity to deal with state government as it exists and the federal government as it exists. My argument would be, we don't like arguments. My persuasive point would be, hopefully, that we live in a world of change. And part of the crisis we're going through is when Congress becomes dysfunctional, it drops down to the state level. And when state government becomes dysfunctional, it comes down to local governments and local regions. And they got no place else to go, okay? Somebody has to start fixing problems. If you do not have a strategy for your issue, for your concern, for your infrastructure piece, that is focused on that piece of the reality, you are committing yourself, in my opinion, to a life of being a supplicant. All you do is run around asking for people for money. The win here, the essential win, is for us to come together as a people and a community and understand the value of things as they impact all of us. Okay? That's a little Pollyannish, but it's where we have to be targeted, in my opinion. And that's why this stuff is important. It's not about saying you should take everything you've done and run like hell at it, okay? But if that's all you do, we have not done what we need to do.
So let me address, we mentioned state government, which is sort of the area that I do business in. It used to be the case that one organization had enough muscle to get something through all by itself. But those days are gone in Wisconsin. Now you need multiple groups, and best yet, seemingly uninterested groups advocating for your particular desire. Now, you have the tremendous benefit and asset of having my good friend Ruth as one of your leading spokespeople, or the Miss Childcare, I might say. Why? Because she makes friends with everyone. She has held a lot of hands. She's gotten a lot of people to say this is an issue and joined your effort and your voice. So we are doing the right things. We got a ways to go. But in having people understand what the challenge is one part. The second part is coalescing around a specific small number or single solution, which we have multiple avenues right now, but we're getting close.
Okay, so why don't we get some final thoughts from everybody here? My short comment is, critical mass for certain issues. Sometimes big issues take a lot of time. I remember the anti-smoking law. That was introduced multiple sessions before it passed. So, you have to, sometimes these things do take a while, but if you get a critical mass surrounding an issue, it can move quickly. And so we may be at that point. Okay, let's go get some final thoughts from the other three folks on the panel. Go ahead, Chris, and we'll just go down the line.
So yesterday, I hosted a Zoom meeting with Professor Stephen Deller from UW-Madison, and he talked about the fourth wave of economic development. And I opened this up to the public along with our board because his discussion is really important, that the world of economic development now is about people, it's not about jobs. That you need to attract the people and the jobs will follow. Childcare is such an important part of his concept of placemaking that the reason why people come and live in the community is for a variety of reasons. It's the schools, it's the health care, it's the quality of life, it's the safe streets, but it's also about a great place for childcare. My role at Seven Rivers Alliance is to make this region a great place to live and work, and we can't do that unless we can fix our childcare challenge. If we can help fix that childcare challenge, I'm really confident that the rest of the attributes that make up placemaking, we've got it nailed. We know this is a great place to live. If we can figure that out, then the people will come and then the jobs will follow. So that's why this is such an important issue beyond the great folks that came here today and are participating online. And I know the sacrifices, particularly that you providers had to make to be here today, because it's another day out of your place of employment and you had to find somebody else to cover for you. Thank you so much for being here, showing your passion, and we hope to continue to carry that mantle and to be your advocate to finding some solutions for this.
Okay, Jody?
Am I on? Yeah.
You are.
So I have a couple things that are top of mind for me. One is that number I shared before, 372 slots we're in jeopardy of losing if our local providers don't get some help right away with their staffing concerns. That's urgent, and I see the ARPA dollars in a good way to invest in our local child care providers, ensure those slots stay available. I mean, we're really at a point of every time we lose a slot, it's probably a parent who's not going to be able to go to work. So it's not just losing a child care slot, it's losing another person in the workforce. I believe that we need long-term solutions that are sustainable. I also think that it's a wise investment for the ARPA dollars. We need so many different solutions, need to try so many different things to really find out what works. And one of the things, the other thing that's top of mind for me is, as we try these new initiatives, are we measuring, are we keeping track of what really is making a difference so that we can replicate those initiatives in other communities and then pull together and pay attention to the things that aren't working, and let's not think of those as failures. Let's think of those as lesson learned. Let's make a list. Let's share that with our other communities in the state. Same with the successes. Let's collect what's working and share with everybody. And I am I am optimistic. I think we're talking about these big solutions that can have impact in many environments. What I'm really optimistic about are the small individual conversations that will be happening between child care center directors and other folks in the community as people try out their own creative ideas and ways of connecting. I'm really excited about that. And those things we probably won't hear about for a while, but I think they're going to make a difference in this environment as well.
Please share your stories. Share them in a people-focused manner. And don't just focus on your people, but focus on the impact that they have to the region, to the health of our region, to the growth of our region. Focus on that. Find partnerships, develop coalitions, as Mark suggests, sometimes with groups that you may not think might be in your corner, but they are in your corner. Bring them along. Share their voice as well. You have a wonderful story to tell, and it's crucial, and it's not heard enough. And Ruth talked about squeaky wheels. You need to be one.
Tom, still zooming in. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, one of the other things I picked up, and it was just touched on again during the fuller conversation, was there's a bit of tension out there about how to best use the ARPA dollars. There are, people who think maybe the best way is to immediately put some of those dollars to work on the workforce side. And then there are others who say, well, okay, what do we do down the road if and when those dollars cannot be replaced otherwise? So that's a tension that I think is going to play out locally a lot of places around the state. And it's deserving as you think about, where are the plans and who delivers this, that has to be addressed. Second, I couldn't agree more about the notion that the more contacts within the legislature, and bear in mind this coming year will be a budget process, and that in fact the administration itself will be putting together a budget probably starting this summer. That the contacts with legislators themselves are invaluable. When I think about the things that we've been able to help enact in Wisconsin, there wasn't a single case where it didn't take a lot of time and a lot of personal touches within that body. Rusty will remember this because I probably talked with him during one of his past roles at the Tribune, but we were talking about broadband so many years ago that I don't think most people could define it. Yet it took time for that familiarity and comfort and urgency to really, truly take root. So those are some thoughts, Jeff.
All right, Jim, you want to take it home?
Okay. Well, again, I am humbled by everything I've heard today. I'm humbled by the amount of effort and work that went into putting all of this together. And I am incredibly impressed with the platform that was already in place, both at the state level and in the Seven Rivers Alliance, to be able to build this go-forward piece. I guess my takeaways, are other than the ones I've already commented on, would be I want to go back to the need to engage the private sector in this process. Your argument is not complete that they need you to do your jobs if they're not at the table. Okay? It does not have the credibility. The second reason you need to do it is I think that there are resources and skill sets that they can share with you that would improve that. It also gives you a voice inside the corporate C-suites in the communities. So I think I would urge you to think about how do you engage those people? What is it you want them to do? Not just to listen to your concerns and your problems, but to talk with them about how you become partners in the go forward so that you become part of the corporate business community and perceived as such. Why the chamber should be championing this issue, okay? Seven Rivers already is, and I assume the chamber is, quite honestly. So, I mean, those kinds of questions I think are worth looking at. I continue to say, you know, the concept of sustainability for critical public services is an essential piece of the go forward. I mean, in this kind of chaos that we're living through, at all sorts of different levels, if you are not addressing the question, not just how do you finance something, but how do you secure the financing? I mean, how do you keep a community viable and vital and as wonderful as La Crosse is if you're constantly at the mercy of somebody else with a budget, okay? You have to begin, you produce value. We need to be proud of the fact that we produce value and demand to get paid for it, okay? But you have to do that in an investment model. So somebody measures it, somebody says, here's when the value is accrued, and here's how you capture it and put it back in to the service to support the service. So I think all of those things are important. Ultimately, you guys, like everybody else, you're busy. I mean, it's 18 hours a day or whatever it is. And so the last thing I would leave you with is, this will not happen unless it's somebody's kind of job, all right? And so a lot of jobs have been assigned, okay? So Ruth is covering a large block of that stuff. You're covering a large block of it. Seven Rivers is covering a large block of it, okay? The question is, well, okay, so what happens to this story building? What happens to this rolling out the more contact with the legislature from a local base? And I would make that from a local base. They need to hear from where they live and where they are elected. Okay, that's the voice that they need to be hearing. So encourage your peers around the state to be doing what you're doing and what we've talked about here. I'd love to see a meeting like this take place in every region in the state. I'll stop there. Thank you again for coming. Yes.
So I just wanted to take a moment just to explain how the passions become inflamed. The child care industry has not been invited to be sitting at any of these discussion-making tables. We have been represented. Represented by the Parenting Place, which we use your services. We love your services, but this is not a child care provider. No. Angie and I have talked. We're talking about the committees that, not in today's. I appreciate what I'm talking about is the committees that are making decisions and trying to tackle this child care issue. They're not having the right people at the table, or at least included in this collaboration, if you're not including members from the industry. We're not hearing the stories from the industry, and just like you have your own background knowledge of things, we have important things that we could bring to the table. We are very educated. Those are one of the misconceptions of this. The two people that are sitting in here today, we both have our master's degrees. We've both been in this for over 20 years. So just some positivity to end on here, because I feel that some of the things that I had said might have been misconstrued a little bit, or at least I didn't communicate them clearly. Sprout Childcare is innovative. Sprout Childcare has taken an innovative approach to training teachers. We do not have a staffing issue at Sprout Childcare. We have, for every classroom that are ages that have more than 8 children in that, minimum requirements are 2 teachers. Sprout Childcare has 3 teachers. We also have float personnel that are shared between a minimum of 2 classes, at max 3 classes, based off of whatever the ratio number is. We can make this happen. We do make this happen. We provide 401ks that with a complete employer contribution to our employees. Our employees make $18 an hour. We have been a leader in this industry. Where this all comes to is an innovative approach to training. When we are taking our focus on creating more slots, and we are not focusing in on what is an innovative training to be able to create career individuals, not high school students that may fill a gap and are not going to be there. That's not going to provide quality childcare. Our quality rating systems that we have out there show that the correspondence courses are not considered quality educators. We are quality educators. We are not childcare workers. We need to be able to take the models that are there locally, help support that training of being able to train individuals. We've been doing this from before COVID, and now this is shown a light on what the importance is to this infrastructure. We're not here advocating for Sprout childcare. We're okay. We're advocating for every other daycare center that has not been able to figure out how to be able to get this strategic way of training people to get them into a career field. And when we're not brought at the table, we can't share our information.
We tried to make it clear that we want to capture these voices, the best practices, all the rest of those things. So why don't you come and tape a session that we will put in our digital library? It goes out to thousands of people across the state, okay? And we make that offer to lots of people. I mean, I won't guarantee you that everything gets, on the pages, but that's exactly the kind of information we need, and I think it's exactly the kind of thing that people need to hear, and to the extent that you can identify other folks that are making it work, and so that people understand there's at least a model that does this, okay?
Sure.
And here's a critical component. All of that helps inform the process.
It does. I had recorded my statement and of how we have made our innovative approaches to training. I've recorded it. It was sent out to the council that was making this decision, because when I had spoke, this is not my first time I've spoke with people on this. When I had spoke with Brian and Julie, they had me submit my recorded approach to that, and I never received an audience. We were never able to have any childcare administrators or providers. It's not because we don't want to be heard. It's that we are not invited to the table, and we are most often not even told there is a table. So the approaches that you are saying that we should wind up doing, we as providers are doing this. We are getting the information out to where it needs to be. I had never heard anything back except for thank you, we'll think about it. But then they approach the school district. So this is where a little bit of frustration comes in. That same council supports approached the school district and asked them for this proposal. I had a meeting with the superintendent yesterday because I didn't want to just go off media blast. I wanted to be able to get information direct from the source. So the superintendent and I met for about a half an hour yesterday to have my questions answered.
All right.
They're just not listening to our field.
Okay, so I can empathize with the frustration, okay? And somebody needs to address that, it seems to me. Sure. What I can do is say to you, so what you recorded, was it video or just audio?
Video.
Send us the video.
I will absolutely send that.
Okay? Yes.